guys, what's up? And welcome back to another BBOD talk. Today we are discussing a really exciting project on the channel, which is Decred. I'm really excited to have Decred on the channel today because I personally think it's a great project and I've really enjoyed doing my research into it. I'm joined today by Isaac, one of the Decred community managers, and he's joining us here for an interview. It's great to have you here on the channel, Isaac.
Great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
That's okay, no problem. So let's get started with our questions. So first of all, Isaac, if you could just tell us what is Decred and just give us like an introduction to the project.
Sure. So Decred is a community-directed digital currency. And so what Decred has done is taken everything that works really well in Bitcoin. So it's an extremely secure store of value, a secure blockchain. And it's added a second piece, a governance layer onto that to empower the community. So Decred stakeholders get to collectively determine our policy, our development plan, our budgets, even changes to the consensus rules, the protocol itself.
Okay, yeah, that was one of the things I really enjoyed finding out about how community-driven Decred is. So what is next for Decred? What is kind of the middle to long-term vision? What do you see for Decred in the future?
Well, probably the two things that are most exciting to me that are in progress right now, and this can all be viewed in our proposal system, is we're in the middle of finalizing our version of Lightning Network, and Decred was one of the early movers in atomic swap technology, which is the basis of how Lightning channels operate and how Lightning settlement operates. In fact, they developed a lot of the repository that was then used by the Lightning Network team for Bitcoin. And we think that we're going to have a really foundational system for the Lightning Network. And the second piece I would say for mid to long term is that we are going to fully decentralize the elements of policy development, budget. We've already taken that further than any of the other projects in the space, down to the point where the centralized human interaction right now is no more than signing a verification of the payment processes. But even that is going to be decentralized and automated, and that's in progress right now with our DAE project.
Okay. So obviously you mentioned Bitcoin. Decred, I found when doing my research, has kind of been labeled as like Bitcoin's big brother, and it's Decred is what Bitcoin should have always done in the beginning. And I kind of found that this is mostly from the hybrid on-chain governance model that Decred has, and that this system of user governance is very different to other coins and platforms that you're going to see in the crypto space. So what was the idea behind choosing this model for Decred?
Sure. So proof of work is an extremely secure system, and that's what the Bitcoin system is based on. When Bitcoin launched, there was no such thing as proof of stake. That system hadn't been around. Had it been around when Bitcoin launched, maybe Bitcoin would have launched differently. However, there are some serious security vulnerabilities that have been well documented with a pure POS system. And so what Decred does is it takes POW and adds a POS layer on top of that. And that's why some people call it hybrid. Some people also call it multi-factor consensus. So similar to a multi-factor login, where you have to use your password to get in, and then you take a code from your phone and enter that in. Well, those two pieces, that makes it more secure, logging into your account. Well, our multi-factor consensus or hybrid consensus mechanism in Decred does the same thing. You have POW first, and then those blocks are ratified by POS. So it has all the security of POW with a POS layer added to make it more secure. The numbers show it's somewhere around 20 times more secure, dollar for dollar, to create a system this way. So number one, it gives us security. Number two, that POS layer enables all that stakeholder consensus mechanisms, all the governance that is not possible in a POW only based system. So that's why with Decred, the stakeholders actually get to make the real binding decisions on chain. Things like changing the consensus, choosing blockchain size, those sorts of things that back in 2014, 2015, when the idea for Decred was being created, some of the Bitcoin development teams saw the writing on the wall that there were decisions to make down the road. Will the blockchain size change? And those decisions, we need to have a measurable system so that it doesn't become a thing like a Twitter war or a community fracturing event.
Okay. So obviously you mentioned with this that the stakeholders have full control over the decisions that are made. So what does this mean for, say, like the developers and the miners? Do they have any power? And what about users in the form of full nodes?
That's a great question. So like I mentioned, Decred has POW running. And so there is still the same power structure in place that exists in Bitcoin, meaning that nodes ratifying what version of protocol we're running, the POW mining system, development being released, those entities still have power. They simply don't have all the power. And so the signaling and the choosing which protocol to use and the directing budget, things that are typically today done by centralized foundations on projects, those are the elements that have been pulled into the stakeholder governance system. So it's not that those other elements have been eliminated, it's simply that the power has been balanced.
Okay. So I guess with the stakeholders having decisions as well, it does really make it feel very community driven, and I'm sure the stakeholders enjoy that they have they can make those decisions.
Oh, absolutely. It makes for a very strong community. It makes for an engaged community, one that I've really enjoyed being a part of. And it really is that balancing alignments and creating a balance where you aren't relying on single individuals or small organizations, or especially private organizations or private corporations that are making decisions behind closed doors, centrally steering what is ideally a decentralized project. And so that's an issue that it wouldn't be reasonable to say that Bitcoin should have foreseen back in 2009. But by the time we were moving towards Decred launching in 2014, 15, and 16, those issues had come forward, and this is the solution to those problems.
Okay. So then with Decred, if you feel like, obviously you've talked about Bitcoin and we kind of see it's like the titan that is Bitcoin. Do you feel that if Decred is really going to be up there and competing with Bitcoin, that they will need to draw their users in from the Bitcoin community?
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think the Bitcoin community is something that's constantly changing. When I've looked at research, it's shown that the demographics and the political opinions of those involved in the Bitcoin community, while being sort of a specific slice of the world early on, have been growing and changing. So who is in the Bitcoin community? Who would we be pulling from? That's a moving target. That's always changing. Being in the community, I can tell you that many of our developers were initially Bitcoin developers, and that having that understanding of how to develop for Bitcoin is essentially a prerequisite for being able to develop for Decred. Decred has everything that Bitcoin has at the POW layer, and then you also have to understand, well, how does this ticket staking POS system work? So from a contributor standpoint, certainly we're seeing a lot of inflow from folks who have previously been in the Bitcoin world. In the stakeholder community, we see a lot of the same. that the people who become most interested and most excited about Decred generally already have an understanding of Bitcoin and have been involved in Bitcoin for some time, and perhaps have seen some of the potential limitations or shortcomings that occur within that environment, and are curious about, well, is there a more collaborative option? Is there a even more decentralized option out there? And that's one of the things that draws people into Decred. That's not to say we don't have community that one of their first experiences is getting involved in Decred, but I would say that's probably less common.
Okay, that's really interesting. So now I have a couple of questions that I got from the Telegram community for Decred. So I'm just going to read those out now. So one of the questions was privacy-oriented cryptocurrencies such as Zcash and Monero are facing possible bans if countries follow the lead of Japan. Despite the upcoming features, Decred has mentioned that they're prioritizing universal fungibility over a higher level of privacy. So could you tell us what this may mean from a regulatory perspective?
Sure. So I guess first I want to say just that question really is an indication to me what kind of community we have. That's a very informed and specific question to be asking. So privacy. So you mentioned two pieces that are often included when people think about privacy. One is fungibility, and this is a universal value of what is sound money. Is one bit of this here worth the same as one bit of this here? And yes, that is part of what was listed as some of the ideals in the Decred Constitution, and something that's held dear by many people within the community. Another idea about privacy is transaction obfuscation, meaning blanking out the ability to see what went to where. And this is not generally considered to be a foundational part of money. Regardless, when we're talking about fungibility or privacy, this is just one aspect of what makes very sound money, what makes a very sound project. And Decred is not going to be a one-trick pony, as you were. It's not going to be a privacy project, which other projects, you might have. We have a quantum secure project. We have a privacy project. Well, that's great, and it's excellent that these different alts are out there driving forward one element of what sound money can be. But we're taking a little bit different perspective. We have developed this foundational governance that allows us to adapt and integrate anything. And so certainly a level of privacy and fungibility, that's an important piece. And we're going to pragmatically adapt that. I think because all projects are going to make an attempt to adapt this in some way. The fact that we are going to move forward with looking at what's an appropriate use and what is fungibility would not put us on the radar for being a quote unquote privacy project that might have really specific regulations. So I think that's about as specific as I can get answering that question. There certainly is work happening. It can be followed in our Matrix channels and our Discord channels on GitHub. For those that want to dive in and really dig into the technical detail. But fungibility, I would say, number one, absolutely would be a higher priority.
Okay, that's great to hear. So the second question I had from the Telegram community was, how does the team see the voting in the far future? What are the positives and negatives of this?
How do we see the voting in the far future? What are the positives and negatives of it? Sure. Okay, so I guess I could take that and say, going into the far future, what are potential limitations of voting that we've seen? So Decred has a limited supply. The supply cap is the same as that of Bitcoin, 21 million coins. So that means that essentially there are also a limited supply of tickets, and tickets are what are used to vote in the governance system. That's how our POS operates. So stakeholders can choose to take any portion they want of the Decred that they hold and lock that into a purchase of tickets. And via smart contract, their Decred is still held by them. It never leaves their control. So they still have custodianship, but it's locked via smart contract while their ticket is out there and ready to be voted. And so because those tickets are of limited supply, potentially scaling at some point in the distant future, we could reach a place where there are more individuals that want to be part of that voting process, that want to be part of that governance system than there are tickets available. I mean, I think this would be a very good problem to have, right? That's one of the scarcity things. If there's more people that want Decred or more people that want Bitcoin than there is Decred or Bitcoin available, then the value, the price simply goes up. The market will reflect that, and the same thing happens with tickets. However, it may be possible that sometime in the future we want to enable some kind of a scaling solution. So if we ran into a problem of not enough tickets, there are some drawing board solutions and even beta tested solutions right now for how would we take tickets and split those into portions of a ticket that could be used to vote. And so that's something that the community will have to decide going forward. Is that something we want to support? Do we want to break tickets down into a tenth of a ticket or a 20th of a ticket and allow a hybrid solution to enable voting for a larger number of people? Does that address what you're asking?
Yeah, I think so, and I think this would possibly address what was asked by someone from the Telegram community. It seemed like a very detailed answer, and I'm sure.
I guess I'll say one other thing about that.
Okay.
So another piece of that question was, what do we see as the positive long term? And this is maybe even not long term, but middle term. We're getting very close, like I mentioned, to having a DAE in place. There's a proposal that's really worth reading out there at proposals.decred.org, presented by one of our lead developers, Marco. And it's going to take the entire human interaction part of the proposal and governance system out and have a decentralized entity and performing those same functions that a foundation might perform. And so at this point, we really do, the project itself has sovereignty and it's fully decentralized. So that's an exciting, maybe midterm view of what Decred is going to be. It's really going to be a self-funded, self-directed digital currency with all the security and adaptability. It's positioning to be a superior store of value, I would say.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it's going in an exciting direction. It's a very exciting project now, and I really enjoyed looking into it, and I would say it's like one of my favourite projects that I've researched. So that was our final question for today. So yeah, as I said, I think it's a great project, and hopefully one day we'll see it right up there with Bitcoin. And also we can't wait to see any future developments with Decred. And we hope to be having further discussions with you and with others within the Decred community and keeping our traders informed with all of these further developments. So yeah, it's definitely been really interesting to talk to you today. So if everyone enjoyed the video, please like down below and subscribe to keep up to date with any of our future videos, because we should be having lots more videos just like this and interviews. To keep up to date with the BBOD exchange, please follow us on Twitter at BBOD Trading and at BBOD Research. Also like us on Facebook and join our Telegram group. All of the links are going to be in the description, and we will also have links to Decred. So if you want to find out more about this exciting coin, then you can go and find all that info in the description. Also, don't forget, very soon you're going to be able to trade Decred versus TUSD with up to 25 times leverage, and you can go long and short at www.bbod.io. So join us very soon for another video, And thanks again, Isaac, for joining us today. It's been great to have you on the channel.
A pleasure. Thank you.